A few weeks ago, I brought all three of my V12 Lamborghinis here to DC Motorworks for Cameron Davis and his team to go through each of them and fix what was needed. Now, these are cans that I've been kicking down the road for years and years, and they're now at the point where the engines are going to start to go back in the cars. So they've done all they're probably going to do, barring any catastrophes between hoisting it here and putting it there. But I wanted to talk to Cameron today to just understand how necessary the inevitably huge bill that I'm going to receive is, based on the fact that I've had so many fairly trouble-free miles in these cars for so many years. So I said, look, I want you to run me through everything that you did and what the honest odds were that I was going to make it through my next trip or next journey based on the things that they've now learned were very, very wrong with each of the cars.
Mr. Bolian,
Hey.
you know we charge extra if you work on it yourself.
I know the look over your shoulder fee is certainly on the invoice, but I do appreciate all the hard work. So what I want to figure out, though, is how necessary was all of this?
You should have done this when you bought the car.
Well, I could barely afford the car when I bought it. I certainly haven't been able to afford it since then, and probably not today, but we'll find out later how much I've got to afford. But like, what is the thing, as you've gone through it all, that was most likely to strand me or end up with a tow bill on my next drive?
You had a couple hoses that were no longer rubber. They had kind of turned into plastic.
Which ones?
On each end of the motor. So you've got the lovely coolant hose back here.
That looks nice and new.
Yeah, it's nice and shiny. It's got a little piece of tin foil on it.
Okay.
But that one had a nice split right down the clamp there that was just begging to explode.
And that's a big hose, so it would have put all my coolant out immediately.
In short order, yes.
Okay, so that's the most likely. Now, based on how bad it was, how likely was I to make it to my next destination?
You're probably flirting with 50-50.
Okay, all right, well, I mean, I live dangerously like that.
When I moved the hose, it broke.
Well, I wasn't going to move it. I was just using it. All right, so we had a 50% chance of making it with the coolant hose. All right, what other hose?
You had the power steering hose,
Okay.
which lives right here.
Yep.
Lives above hot things and electrical things. Like
And
your
what was wrong with
alternator. It also had a split right down the clamp also. Thankfully not leaking.
But it was holding
It did.
for then. Okay. And what are the odds of that making it?
You're probably 50-50 on that one. Too.
Okay, so now we're at 25%. Okay. What's next?
You've got a starter.
Right, and it started. This one started better than that one.
This one did, but it is a common thing with Mercies, and you never know when that last click is going to be
And
today.
we've rebuilt that rather than bought a $4,000 one.
Yes.
Okay.
It's $7,003 from Lamborghini.
What?
And we had it rebuilt for about $350.
Okay, that's a win. Excellent.
With Bosch parts.
With Bosch part. Okay,
it is proper.
What were the odds my starter went out? Not that bad.
10.
10%.
10
Okay.
or less. You know,
All right.
You're pretty safe there.
I can take that.
With a gated car, you could have just pushed it.
Now
which
that-
we're no stranger to, right?
That howl that I was hearing from the middle of the car, that was, I presume, the torque tube bearing?
More than that. So you've got your torque tube bearing, which
Right.
lives in this general area.
Yes.
But you've also got the rear drive shaft, which has two bearings. And as I showed you before, the one that was not really bearing anymore.
Yeah, it was okay.
It's missing a few things.
And how bad was that?
That was very bad.
And so if that seized, I just lose all power?
You would have broken things.
Oh.
So something would have had to give, whether it was the rear diff, whether it was the PTO transfer case unit on the transmission. Something would have given.
And how bad was it worn out?
Like I said, there was half the bearings were gone.
So like,
You were
all right,
like scatter-shotting BBs all over the ground.
okay, so my drive shaft bearing. What's my odds of making it there?
Well, who knows how long it was like that. So, 20?
20%. Oh, okay. That's
Like I said, if I could
meaningful.
predict the future, I'd be in a different business.
Okay. Well, the odds are not stacking up. Okay. But what about, I mean, the front one was also in need of replacement, right?
It was grumbly and making some funny noises, yes.
Okay. So the torque tube bearing, how bad was it? Maybe, we'll
Go a little less. It still had bearings
I'm
in
going to
it.
say 75%. It was going to work.
You're pretty safe. It's just
Okay.
noisy.
Okay. Gotcha.
But again, that destroys some very expensive parts.
But this one was holding its fluids, so unlike the Diablo, so it was going to make it places, right?
Yeah, it was a little gross in this area. I went through a lot of brake clean.
Okay. Was it at any risk of oil starvation or letting it all go?
Yes, so at some point in its very well cared for life, these are your camshaft variator covers or upper covers, and these are your solenoids that actuate the variable valve timing. And there's a metal gasket that lives around here, but someone had decided to cover it in silicone. And there's little tiny oil ports that very easily could be clogged by silicone. And then you would be starving your cam variators or the solenoids for oil, and that would not work.
Okay, but that's not high odds. It's probably been that way for a long time. So better than 75.
You skated by, yeah. You did pretty good on that.
90% chance, I think. That's what that means. All right, of oil starvation.
Those are some real percentages you got.
That's
over
right.
there.
We're doing some math. Okay, what else is going to ruin my day?
Your spark plugs were not exactly to spec. So you might have been kind of leaking some compression, had some weird misfires going on there. Like I said, I'm still just amazed that you didn't do this earlier. Was there no signs?
I mean, yes, there were plenty of, yes, it ran like hot garbage a lot, but usually if you turn it off and back on again, it would heal itself.
Good old key cycle reset.
That's exactly right. Okay, so if I ran out of sparks, that was not high odds.
Yeah, the coil packs are a little gross too. We talked about that.
So, but I mean, so you're saying it would have gotten so bad that I would have had to stop driving it?
You might have been running on like 6 cylinders.
No, I know what that's.
If it went bad.
If it, okay, so at that, if it were, then all right, and the odds of that happening soon were?
We'll still stay around that 20%.
Okay.
You do like to drive it in the rain, though.
All right, so we're going to say 80% chance. I do like the rain. They're even better in the rain because people stay away from you. Now, what I really thought we were here to replace, because it was critically going to fail soon, was my clutch. But you've told me that my clutch was actually in quite good shape despite having tens of thousands of miles on it. So why was it slipping?
So rear main seal was quite wet with oil.
How wet?
It had totally coated the inside of the bell housing. So again, more brake clean, and but it's nice and clean and shiny now.
Okay, so I mean, I was probably experiencing some level of clutch slippage a third of the times that I was driving it. So, but that wasn't. Was it about to get worse?
It would only get worse as the fibers of the clutch absorb more.
All right, so we're going to stick with that being a 90% chance of success.
But what could have been detrimental is, I almost forgot, but the CV axle on the passenger side was quite loose.
How loose?
The bolts weren't tight at all.
But they were in?
Yeah, none of them went missing, so you had 6 chances of them staying connected.
It's better than the rest of my odds.
That is pretty good.
But
yeah.
how? All right, but it was about to break.
It could have come loose.
But that would that have been like an ambulance bill or a tow bill?
Depends on how fast you were going. Because if the axle came loose and the wheels were spinning, obviously, that it would have gone flailing around the chassis of the car and the frame of the car. And
flailing around sounds problematic and expensive.
It could have gotten expensive.
All right, but I mean, how close was it?
Well, like I said, all 6 were in there, so you were doing pretty solid. I mean, you were
50%, absolutely 50%.
Yeah.
That was it. I was going to make it. So it was a total coin toss to make it without my coolant hose exploding, 50-50, but down to 25% since the power steering might have exploded. The starter takes us down to 22.5, but the big one is down to 5% or so because the drive shaft bearing was going to stop me. The front torque tube could go, and that's going to take us to, I don't know, 3.5, 3.7%, closer to 3, closer to 2.5, closer to 2, and 1. 1% chance that my next journey was going to be problem-free.
I don't know how you did it, Ed.
Got every mile out of it. Okay, well, that's bad, but certainly the black car's better. Let's go look at it.
You have always told me that Mercies don't come in without being on a tow truck.
Were any of the filters really terrible?
Those engine filters were pretty awful. I haven't pulled the cabin filters yet. They're in the front.
Okay, but was the fuel filter really bad here?
Evan, do you see any nasty stuff coming out of them? Oh, he's got something for you.
is supposed to be a nice kind of clearish yellow.
Yep.
And that's got a more grayish tinge to it.
It turned my fuel
Oh, look
gray.
at that one.
Yeah, so this one,
Grigio. Oh,
yeah.
what?
So it's not supposed to be the color of your car. Yeah, not ideal. So fuel filters were a bit overdue. But we got new fuel filters in there for you.
So what happens when you reach the end of life of a fuel filter?
Fuel filter, I mean,
It just clogs, right?
it
So it
clogs.
just clogs and it won't, yeah. So
Yeah,
I've been through that on Cannonball cars. So, all right. So that would have stopped me to the point, and they're not convenient to clean out roadside. No. And you can't just hit it with a hammer, which
Not
we've done
quite.
to many a fuel filter on cross country.
Just got to loosen up the debris in there. That's all.
You know, okay. That's really dirty. Okay, so the fuel filters were probably I was in a 25% chance of making it to my next thing.
Let's go with a 20%.
20% chance with the fuel. Okay, well that's starting real bad. Okay,
Do we just start putting them on your shirt?
yep, we can do that. All right, 20% chance of survival on the fuel filters. That's gonna make the audio nice, isn't it? Right, when I do that.
Crackly? Yeah.
All right, 20% chance on the fuel filters. What's next? Obviously my detonating front differential would have been quite problematic. I mean, I would have had 2 more wheels to drive with, but the noise that I experienced when it failed on that one was meaningful enough that it did involve a tow bill.
Yeah, that would definitely scare you if you start hearing those noises.
But we were still probably a 75% chance of making it to the next
Yeah,
destination.
you would have made it with that one.
All right, how were the hoses on this bad boy?
Marginally better than the green car.
Okay, so let's say power steering, 90% chance of success.
Yeah, you were pretty good on that one.
All right, cool.
It's more the cooling hoses.
Big
that,
exploding coolant hose, was it a little worse?
Yeah, they're all very crunchy.
I'm going 80%.
I like your optimism. But hey, you did this great
Eternally.
so far. I need your luck.
Well, it sounds like it's finally caught up with me. This one though, I mean, apart from a lot of things that were deferred, is pretty okay.
Yeah, this one was great. I mean, for the most part. The
Great.
clutch was pretty heat scorched.
Okay, so yeah, that one, my clutch wasn't gonna do it. Was the rear main okay here?
Yeah, this one's good, but you got a new one anyway.
Well, yes, because while we're in there, why not? All right, so the clutch hit here though it wasn't that bad. We're gonna
No.
go 90%. But relative to that car, this thing mint.
Yes, this is like showroom in comparison.
All right, so we had a 20% chance of making it with the most problematic issue, the fuel filters. Get down to 15% with the front diff exploding, down to 13.5, down to 10, 9% chance of making it somewhere in this car. That feels like this is the one I should have been
Single
relying
digits.
on. Man, 9%. Whew, okay, so again, it was definitely time.
I think your chances of getting rained on were higher.
I did get rained on in that car a good bit. But, you know, you get to feel the wind in your hair and see over the windshield and all the fun things that come with roadster life. I know these have been taking up most of your time, so we haven't done a whole lot of Diablo fixing yet, have we?
No, it's coming.
I bet it's dripping oil on that Mercedes.
But we have drip trays for that.
Oh,
so
good.
it is
good.
safe.
Excellent. Good for the Mercedes. I see we've got the wing off to get painted a more proper matte black. We're not going to disparage the parties that turned it orange. I've been told to stop speaking about it. And so
I like the orange.
Yeah, I do. And the further away you stand, the better it looks. But here, mostly it was just oil. I mean, this car went places. I mean, it was not going to start and stuff like that, but that was mostly just electronics. So we'll talk more about this car another day. And I guess now the engines go back in, and then you give me some really bad news, and I call Premier Financial Services for some support to write you a big check.
We do have some news about the bill.
Oh, and what is that?
We'll talk about it. It's actually good news.
Good news about I like good news about bills.
Yes.
That doesn't tend to happen in my life, but I appreciate everything, and it seems like I got here just in time.
Yes.